Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
Rodney, I bet you there was somebody out there that watches the show or is a member of TiderInsider.com that said, I bet they'll have popcorn on the set. They were right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. You see our tumblers as always. Don Staley and his group do a great job for tourism in West Alabama. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVOA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Lane Kiffin said, get your popcorn ready. I guess Ole Miss didn't get theirs ready. Either the microwave was unplugged or the popper didn't work, but Alabama certainly took that to heart, and the Tide turned out to be the real deal as expected. Ole Miss, and they're a good football team. I don't want to say they're more hype than substance, but they ran into a buzzsaw on Saturday afternoon at Bryant-Denny. There you see Tim Smith, probably the big play in the game early, 4th and 1 from the 6-yard line, stuffing. Was that Jevion Early, Ely that had the run, or whoever it was for Ole Miss there got stuffed? But anyway, that led to Alabama 28-0 at half, and for all intent and purposes, the game was over. Bama led 35-0 in the third, 42-7 in the fourth. Ole Miss did score a couple late touchdowns, including one after just a horrible pass interference call on Josh Jobe in the infield. But 42-21 the final. Alabama did something that nobody really expected them to do. They held Ole Miss to under 300 yards total offense, just a little more than 100 in the first half, and most of that came on that first drive, Rodney. The defense had a great game plan with Pete Golding of, you know what, we're not going to change personnel packages. We're basically going to stay with our base group on defense. Offensively, they ran the football with Brian Robinson and dominated time of possession. It was just a thorough rear-end kicking at Bryant-Denny.
Yeah, it really was. After that first drive, Gary, you mentioned it, the big play by Tim Smith there. But if you'd have told me before the game, what did we talk about the keys last week? Can Alabama get a few stops? If you'd have told me they would have shut Ole Miss out in the first half, I'd have said, no way. It's not going to happen. Ole Miss had, 109 yards in the first half, I think it was. 6 possessions. Ole Miss comes up empty in the first half. That's an amazing stat, I'm telling you. A really amazing defensive performance. I thought the offense played extremely well. Ole Miss was not going to stop Alabama, period. I know Lane Kiffin got a lot of criticism for some of his decisions, and there were some questionable decisions on 4th down. But at the same time, you could see the way the game was unfolding. They weren't going to stop Alabama.
Brian Robinson Jr. out of Hillcrest High School, 171 yards, career high on 36 carries, a career high, 4 touchdowns, a career high. He's the Walter Camp National Offensive Player of the Week. By the way, his high school teammate, Jaquez Jones, linebacker at Kentucky, is the Walter Camp Defensive Player of the Week. That's pretty noteworthy there. But for Brian Robinson, Rodney, it was an opportunity for him to take the next step in becoming the lead back for the Crimson Tide. And he was physical. He was a downhill runner. He finished runs. He wore down Ole Miss. Here's what Brian Robinson had to say post-game following Alabama's dominant victory.
Be physical and just show them how physical our offense can play and how consistent we can play, on a physical standpoint. And it was a great opportunity for us today to show, how physical we can play for 60 minutes.
Well, Rod, you've already kind of recapped the game to a great degree. But, again, this is what a number 1 team looks like. And I want to get back to what we said last week on the show, and I know I said it on my radio show with you as well, and that's that no offense to Ole Miss, but we both thought Alabama would win the game. You picked them by 14. I picked them by 17. And when you question Alabama, that seems to be when they really respond. And there were a lot of people questioning, particularly that defense last week. They can't slow down Ole Miss. Ole Miss torched them last year. But, again, I think we saw what you and I kind of felt like we would see. And that's, again, no disrespect to Ole Miss. They're a good team. But this is the number 1 team in the country riding an 18-game winning streak going in at home against a good team, but a team last year that record-wise was average and had played 3 games this year against inferior opponents, although Louisville is a decent team. I'm just, after the fact, it's easy to say this, but we said it last week, I'm trying to figure out why so many people thought Ole Miss might have an opportunity to win this game.
Well, again, I think when you look at it, Gary, naturally you look back to last year. You look at the difficulty Alabama did have slowing down this Ole Miss offense. Matt Corral's had a year in the system. He's been, maybe the Heisman favorite, certainly one of them. They're averaging 52 points a game, 638 yards a game. certainly, as you mentioned, they had not faced anything the caliber of the athletes that Alabama has defensively. But the confusion that we saw in the second half, and again, I understand the games are different from Florida to playing here in Tuscaloosa. The offenses are a little different, all of these things. But so different circumstances. But just I think that created some doubt in a lot of people nationally. Everyone was talking about Matt Corral. That's all kind of the storyline versus this Alabama defense that they felt like had struggled with these kinds of offenses. So, again, I do think you mentioned the not substituting, keeping their personnel on the field, Gary. This performance, I mean, defensively, was one of the more phenomenal performances to me that I think I've seen, from the Alabama defense in a while.
Well, Rodney, there are no perfect football games, and there were some negatives. Obviously, the injury to Jace McClellan, the knee injury to the second-team running back, who is just dynamic as a guy that can catch the ball, can run it. I mean, you can actually use Jace McClellan, down the field as a receiver, a little bit like Najee Harris. Also, Drew Sanders hurt his thumb in that game. You could see him with it wrapped up. We don't know what the situation there is. He finished out the game, but had his thumb wrapped heavily. And there was that interception for Bryce Young. He has not made many mistakes this year, but that was one there. And, if you want to be hypercritical, that's a throw. And he missed one to Jamison Williams that would have been a touchdown that in a close football game, he doesn't need to make that interception, and he does need to hit Jamison Williams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had Jamison. That would have been the dagger right there. Would have really capped off what was a fabulous day anyway. But, yeah, Bryce doing a great job, though. You talked about the interception in the end zone. Yeah, that was certainly a play. You're right there. You're trying to put the game away, and it may have already been put away. But at the same time, it was an opportunity. You don't ever want to blow an opportunity down there inside the red zone.
And Darian Dalcourt blocked great at center. There were some issues with some snaps. Now, Bryce Young did a good job of bringing them in, but there were several of those snaps that could have gotten away.
Well, listen, when Bryce Young, the last thing he should have to be concerned about is the snap. And I think when you look at it, it messes up the timing on everything, certainly puts him in a difficult situation. I thought he handled it extremely well for the most part, but it does mess up the timing.
And as far as the loss of McClellan, this is Roydell Williams' opportunity. I've loved him since he was at Hueytown High School. He's really a strong, young, hard-nosed running back. I think he'll be fine in the running game. I don't know if he can help pick up the slack that you lose in regards to being a pass receiver. Obviously, Trey Sanders is going to have to factor in as well. But those two young men now, with McClellan out, they got to be the guys behind B-Rob Jr.
Yeah, and you mentioned McClellan earlier. I hate it because I really like Jace. I think he's a potential star down the road, and was showing some of that this year as a runner, as a receiver, all these different things he brings to the Alabama offense. But I like Roydell Williams. Look, he brings a little bit of something too. I like his power, Gary. I think it is and again, he's got the speed, he can do all these things, but I think he's one of the better short yards runners I've seen. I think when it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, Roydell's almost money in the bank. But really like Roydell, and he has shown that he's got good hands. Watched him in high school. He was a good receiver out of the backfield, so look forward to seeing him. And hopefully Trey Sanders. Again, I think Trey last year before his injury was really starting to hit his stride. So, again, tough loss, but these two guys will step up.
And as we mentioned, Drew Sanders with that heavily wrapped thumb, but we've yet to hear anything from Alabama. Hopefully he'll be okay. All right, it's time now for Coach Talk. And as we said, Jace McClellan's injury was serious. He had surgery yesterday, or actually today. He was scheduled to have surgery today, and will miss the rest of the season. As always, it's next man up. But Coach Saban says don't be surprised if it takes a few guys to make up for what the Tide lost in the versatile Jace McClellan.
Jace was a very good player, did a great job as a runner, as well as a blocker, as well as a very good special teams player. So we have to replace him in a lot of areas on our team. But we do have confidence in Roydell, and I think he'll do a good job. And Trey Sanders is going to get more opportunity now, and he's got to be able to step up and continue to make progress as well.
Well, Matthew Travis went to the trouble to pop this popcorn, right? I think I'm going to have a little bit.
You go ahead.
Still to come on Tider Insider Television, there's big buzz on the Tide basketball recruiting front. We'll tell you why. The big commitment Alabama received last week. And Crimson Tide football turns its attention to another former Nick Saban assistant. Jimbo Fisher will take his shot at the GOAT. on Saturday night in College Station. Tider Insider TV will also be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number on your screen, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You see the email address. You can also tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back after we eat some more popcorn. Stay with us. And welcome back to TITV, sponsored by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Popcorn's really good. The only bad thing about eating popcorn, you don't think about it, now I'm on the air and I got little kernels all in my teeth, right? So I'm just going to have to man up. All right, Alabama took the best shot that Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin had to offer, and the Tide came out on top. That means Saban's 24-0 against his former assistants. Jimbo Fisher's going to take his shot on Saturday night in prime time on CBS and College Station. Now, here's the thing, Rod. You know, CBS, when they went ahead and booked this for their primetime game, you know, football doesn't always go as scripted. They were counting on both these teams being undefeated, you know that, and being a top 10 SEC West matchup. Alabama's done its part, but A&M lost to Arkansas in Arlington, really got manhandled. And then at home last Saturday night, lost to Mississippi State in a battle of the Maroon. The Aggies have really struggled after losing their quarterback from a year ago, Kellen Mond, and then Haynes King, who was expected to fill the role. He gets hurt, and they're without him. They've had some other injuries, and let's just be honest, they're a talented football team. Their defensive front may be the best Alabama's faced, but they've struggled. And with the injuries and not having good quarterback play, it's not what they were counting on out in College Station. But you and I both know if they could win on Saturday night, that'd be a season maker for them.
Would be, and let me tell you, we talked about the swamp, all the noise there. Certainly, Kyle Field can in terms of the noise, the things that they generate there, could certainly be a very difficult place to play. But you're right, Gary. I mean, the injuries they've had on the offensive line, their offensive line's been in a shambles. I think they've had like 13 or so not starting lineup, but lineups during the game that they've rotated players around, whatever it might be. Their center, Luke Matthews, went down. Now
really good player. Yeah,
season-ending injury. They've had some trouble in the secondary. You mentioned the defense front plays really well. And again, I think they have an outstanding defense, and especially that defense front. But it's the offensive line. I mean, they've really struggled. You've got Nick Calzada at quarterback, a really young player, inexperienced. He struggled. He's had a lot of pressure on him. So when you look at them offensively, I think that's been the real big issue.
Yeah, Calzada only completing 53.9% of his passes for 744 yards more. 5 touchdowns, but 4 interceptions, so not a great touchdown to interception rate. So he's struggling, due in large part, as you said, to the offensive line issues. But defensively, even though they've given up 844 yards in their last 2 games combined, they've still got a lot of talent on that side of the ball. And that defensive front can get after you.
A ton of talent. I mean, this is going to be a real challenge for the Alabama offensive line. And again, they're going to have to be motivated. When you're talking about players like DeMarvin Leal, who's one of the best defensive linemen in the country, an elite player, number 8, watch out for him. He's a guy that's a difference maker. So up front, defensively, there's talented, as you said, Gary, as talented as anyone in the country. Again, their secondary's been hit a few times. Obviously, this last game, they got hit pretty good with Mississippi State's passing attack. But so it should be a really interesting game to see how Alabama approaches this. Again, it's going to be a real challenge going into a difficult situation, a night game. Crowd's going to be a raucous atmosphere. So, again, I know a lot of people think this is an opportunity for Alabama to go to College Station to blow out Texas A&M. Look, this is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, home field advantage, second to none, although I know there will be a lot of Alabama fans out there. They're going to buy up some of those tickets that are floating around out there on the open market. So a big one on Saturday night as Alabama looks to continue unbeaten and ranked number 1. All right, let's get to some basketball. We know how Nick Saban recruits in football. Nate Oates is doing it too in basketball. The Tide received its first commitment of the 2022 cycle last week. Point guard Jaden Bradley announcing his decision to join the Crimson Tide out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. The 6'3 Bradley chose Alabama over 4 other heavyweight finalists: Kentucky, Arizona, Gonzaga, and Florida State. When you're beating those teams, you know you're recruiting at a high level. The senior point guard cut his list of finalists earlier this year. He visited Tuscaloosa and Coach Oates on the weekend of July 11th. Obviously, it went very, very well. This is a huge, huge pickup for Alabama. All right, still to come on TITV, Alabama women's soccer makes a statement, and the SEC League office was listening. We'll explain. And up next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Right there, the phone number, as always, 205-348-9882. We want to hear from Tider Insider Nation. Your thoughts on what's going on with Alabama athletics next here on TITV. Alabama soccer picked up a huge match win last week over number 24 LSU, and they did it thanks to a goal from Raina Reyes, who would go on to win the SEC Offensive Player of the Week for her efforts against LSU. Reyes' goal gave the Crimson Tide their first win over a ranked team since they beat 15th ranked Auburn last November. The Tide's next match will be in Fayetteville against Arkansas on Thursday. Welcome back into the award-winning Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. It's time to talk to some folks out there. Let's start it off with Dale in Moundville. He is on the Tider Insider TV hotline. Hey, Dale, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Rodney and Gary. When I heard Lane Kiffin make that comment, I got a little nervous, to be honest with you.
He was confident. Yeah.
Yeah, but the defense came to play.
Yeah, they did.
Coach Saban mentioned emergency running back, and I just wondered what candidates y'all think might fit that. And also, I was going to ask you about DeMarcus Lacey out of Pleasant Grove. Is Alabama looking at him?
All right, Dale, let's start with the emergency running back. Alabama's down to 3 backs because the freshman Kamar Wheaton's still out with a meniscus issue. So, yeah, they probably are looking at some guys. Any idea on who they might be taking a look at there for that 4th running back spot?
Well, yeah, and again, I think they're going to look at guys. Certainly not saying they're temporarily moving this particular player to running back. But I do think they may take a look at DeMoy Kennedy, who's inside linebacker.
Great athlete.
Very talented high school player at Theodore High School. Played running back, was a really good high school running back along with being a talented linebacker. So he's one guy that I think they may look at some this week. And, you know, there may be some others, Gary. I know Christian Leary was a really talented high school player that did a lot of things, a lot of versatility, plays slot receiver, could play running back, lined up as a Wildcat quarterback in high school. Again, I don't know if they're going to look at Leary, but I do think they'll probably look at DeMoy Kennedy.
And what about DeMarcus Lacey out of Pleasant Grove?
You know, again, right now, certainly he's a guy whose name has come up. You know, to what extent Alabama will recruit DeMarcus Lacey remains to be seen, but he's a guy. I think he might have been on campus here previously for a game, which, you know, there's a ton of players, prospects that do make visits, and the level or the extent that Alabama recruits all these players varies, but certainly his name has come up, Dale. Again, at this point, we'll just have to see.
All right, thanks for the phone call, Dale, there in Moundville. Let's get to email. This is from Lester in West Blockton. Will Doug Marrone address Darian Dalcourt about the high snaps against Ole Miss? We mentioned that. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to work on that. You just don't want a situation where when those snaps get away, it could be a game-changing play.
Yeah. Well, you know he's going to address it. I mean, listen, I think Bill O'Brien's probably been addressing it for a while. But, no, Darian Dalcourt's done a really nice job. He just really struggled in this last game. And we talked about how difficult that had to be on the offense as a whole, but also Bryce Young. I mean, when you're sitting back there and you got 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds to get a pass off and the snap's not where it needs to be. But, yeah, they'll address it. I think Darian will do a lot better job here in the future, hopefully.
All right, still to come on Tider Insider TV, we'll give you a first-hand look at the UA Adapted Tennis Program's new home and more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. The University of Alabama Adapted Athletics Program showed off its new wheelchair tennis facility on Friday. It is incredible. It's just a great wheelchair athletics program at the University of Alabama, best in the country. This 38-square-foot space houses locker rooms, restrooms, trainer's room, and offices for the coaching staff. That popcorn, getting me. Alabama Adapted Tennis has won a national championship in 2013, 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2019, and now they have a facility that will bring even more success. All right, let's get to a phone call. We're getting a little short on time, but we got CB here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, CB, what's up, my man?
Fine. How y'all, man?
Doing great.
If Lane Kiffin thinks he can bring a team in here, man, and play the Alabama Crimson Tide and Bryant Denny and make them kind of little league calls he made, he's from another country. Popcorn ain't the answer. You think the defensive pressure will keep going? Man, they run that quarterback to death.
Yeah, CB, I do. I really like what Alabama's doing now. And, you know, they're getting pushed up the middle. And Coach Saban always says this, Rodney, sacks are great, but it's more about affecting the quarterback. And the best way to do that is push up the middle, because then the quarterback can't step up. Even with a guy like Bryce or like Will Anderson coming off the edge, the quarterback can step up. But if he can't step up because the pocket's collapsed, then he's really got issues. And I think this Alabama defensive front has the ability to do this.
Yeah, they do. And I did notice LeBron Ray in there, more over the nose, pass rush situation. So he's a guy that certainly can affect the quarterback in that regard. And do some really nice things from that standpoint. But yeah, CB, I really like that. Now, it's going to be a little bit different this week. This is a totally different kind of offense, different kind of quarterback. He's not going to be necessarily the challenge is defending him as a runner like Corral. But again, they are very strong running backs, Gary. They have a strong running game.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails tonight. We're going to be back with our predictions next here on this cloudy but still very beautiful evening in Tuscaloosa. Stay with us. All right, it's prediction time. Alabama, a big 2-touchdown-plus favorite at Texas A&M. A couple weeks ago, probably wouldn't have thought that would be the case, but it is. Rodney, you go first.
Yeah, this is a game, Gary, they've talked about all summer, all spring out in College Station, welcoming Alabama. It was going to be a game of the two undefeateds, but hasn't really kind of panned out that way. I look at Texas A&M right now, and I see their offense. Frankly, it's a mess. I think they're going to have a real difficult time scoring points. Again, I think their defense will probably keep them in it for a while, but I think ultimately Alabama 31-13.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. I mean, we see teams and coaches in this league all the time obsessed with beating Alabama, and it is important if you're going to win a championship. But you can't just beat Alabama. You got to beat other people too. And A&M stumbled a couple of times, and they're trying now to win this game to salvage their season, let's be honest. So they're going to play hard. I think Jimbo will have a great plan. But over the course of 4 quarters, Alabama's the better football team. I think they will wear down. I think the quarterback for A&M is going to have trouble. And I like Alabama to go ahead and win this one fairly comfortably, 38-20 on the road at Kyle Field. All right, thank you for tuning in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of the show, you want to catch it again, you can get a replay tonight at 10:30 on WVOA 23 after the news at 10, or catch it online anytime at WVOA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. We're going to leave you with some Alabama football practice from this afternoon inside the Hank Crisp Indoor Facility. Have a great evening, everybody, and roll Tide.